So with that being said, so with that being said, I am going to welcome you and say Happy Tuesday to Breakfast with
Yeah,
Mark and Jen.
that's it.
It is a great Tuesday. It's sunny where we are today.
Yeah,
Our voices are a little hoarse this recording because we were at a worship night
yep.
this past Sunday. It's absolutely amazing, absolutely incredible. If you live anywhere in the Charlotte area, come to Link Church and I'll give you the details.
You gotta come and then you get the details, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it's a monthly worship night that one of the local pastors that we're really privileged to be connected to hosted. And so Mark spoke this past Sunday, but I think everyone in the building, if you were going hard the way most people in the building were going hard, I think you lost your voice, whether you were the preacher or not. So,
Yeah, I think that what was so dope about it is that it's not a service where the sermon had to be the highlight. And I think that was really cool, is
yeah,
that God just came in the room.
God came in the room.
And sometimes you don't need the best sermon.
Yeah, God came. He did preach a good sermon, by the way, but God absolutely came in the room. And so, yeah, so that's just a little tidbit as to why we may sound a little hoarse. We're not under the weather or anything. We're just
No.
still recovering, even though it's been like almost 48 hours.
Yeah. Are people still afraid like when they hear someone hoarse or coughing? You still think do you think people still have anxiety and trauma from COVID? Like if you walk in the store or if you're in the movie theater and somebody is like sneezing, are people still
I think it
turning around?
depends on the symptom, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if I hear someone sound the way I sound, I'm
Right.
no longer like, oh my gosh. Or even if someone sneezes, for me, it's just if you're coughing too hard, then yeah, I am still a little
Remember that kid? What
traumatized.
store were we in?
Oh,
Was it five?
no, we were in I thought it was Express. You
Yes.
were in the Express. We were at the outlets, and there was a dad who just was letting his kid cough out into the open. It sounded like whooping cough to me, maybe SARS, but it was pretty bad. He just was
We're still
letting
talking
her.
about
My
SARS.
issue is not even that the child was sick. People get sick. My
Right.
issue was that he was just letting her cough in the open. He wasn't, and she was old enough that he could have said like, "Hey, remember to cough into your elbow," or he could have put a mask on her. It wasn't like she was an infant. So I don't. He was just walking, and I mean, I think you could tell that there were people, and her cough was at a level that even my husband, who's not a germaphobe, was a little bit like, all right, like this is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
So because I am a germaphobe, I remember I was in the store and I started going like this.
Use your hand as a
Yeah,
mask.
because I didn't have a mask on me because nobody, I don't really, you don't really wear them so much anymore. And so I just was like this,
Right.
trying to play it off like, oh, I'm just, pensive. But I wasn't pensive. I was trying not to get whatever she had. So I think it depends
So
on the symptom.
depends on the symptom and it depends on the person. Because if you're a germaphobe,
Well,
you'll
yeah,
never forget COVID.
be true.
Like you'll be 20 because you just mentioned SARS. How long ago was
I think when
SARS?
we were in like middle school.
Right. So you'll never forget COVID and somebody hacking.
Yeah, I can't. I
Your
couldn't
your
take,
your mind will go there.
but I couldn't take that before COVID. If people are hacking, but most people can't. Most people don't want people hacking, guys. And so yeah, I guess my husband's right. If you're a germaphobe like me, COVID has probably scarred you to a certain extent. But if you're hoarse, if you sneeze a few times, I'm not like, oh my gosh, but it's the hacking cough that, yeah. So, but that being said, I'm hoping we can
Right.
finally delve into our topic because we're talking about apologies in marriage, learning how to apologize. We've done,
It's
I
good.
think, a teaching on forgiveness.
Right.
And we also know that a lot of people, just people, married or not, are good at, for the most part, receiving an apology.
Right.
But not everybody is good at giving an apology.
Yeah.
And so we want to delve into that because the only one, and this is not me being extreme, the only one who never has to apologize is Jesus Christ.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say.
Okay, no. Already starting off incorrect.
Uh,
But seriously, only Jesus Christ never has to
Only
apologize.
Jesus. And I think this topic is so good because forgiveness is the other side of I'm sorry. So forgiveness is when
Yeah.
somebody has wronged you and they apologize or don't apologize, but then you have to forgive them.
Yeah.
We're now talking about today, hey, you've done something wrong.
Yes.
You're not in a position to forgive because you are the culprit.
Yeah.
How do you say I'm sorry? And should you say I'm sorry? And is sorry a good word in marriage? Is it an important word in marriage?
I say
And we
yes.
say absolutely because to me, I'm sorry has to be one of the most critical phrases in marriage. You cannot live with someone for an extended period of time and not use the word I'm sorry or be
Absolutely.
in tight relationship with someone. So the thing about marriage is that the intimacy can be great, the attraction can be there, finances can be good, but if you can't say I'm sorry, it's amazing how you won't be able to coexist.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry is an important word in marriage. And it takes a person of humility, though, to say
Hmm.
sorry. Because when you can't fix your mouth to literally say the words, I'm sorry or I apologize, it lets us know that pride is in the
I
way.
like that.
Pride is in the way because it's a level of thinking that says, but I never do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I never do anything where I have to apologize.
Yeah.
I don't want to have this video incorrectly flagged for anything. So I'm going to say, without saying the name, I remember years ago, there was a presidential candidate who was asked while he was on the campaign trail,
Right.
do you ever apologize? Do
Right.
you ever, are you the type of person that can say you're sorry? And that presidential candidate literally said, I mean, I've never really been in a
Yeah.
position where I need to apologize. And then the interviewer came back and said, but if you had to apologize, could you? And then that presidential candidate said, I mean, I guess I could, but I've just never had to really do it. I've just never been in a position where I need to
Right.
apologize. And I'm like, that was a red flag right there because this person is letting you know, I don't think that I ever do anything wrong. I don't think I ever do anything offensive. I don't think I ever do anything that warrants an apology. And so I want you to know that if you're that person that is honestly sitting here saying, but I do so well right by my spouse, I never need to apologize, you are currently your own red flag.
Big time.
Okay, you're
Big
your own
time.
red flag because you are
Big time.
prideful.
Big time. And I think, first of all, both parties, men and women, struggle with the word I'm sorry because
Yeah.
it's not a gender thing, it's a personality thing,
Right.
it's a heart thing.
Yeah.
But environments, culture, how we think, where we place people in marriage,
Uh-huh.
I think also influences their ability to say, I'm sorry. Where I'm going with that is that because the Bible says that the man is the head of the household, and some men take that to the extreme.
Yeah.
I make all the decisions. I do this, like I run things. It's very difficult to have a male dominating personality
Yeah.
that you are in charge and then also have enough humility to say, I'm sorry. And so for men, I think it's even more critical to say, I'm sorry. Why? Because as the head, to be able to be the head and humble is really critical to the success of the marriage because your wife is looking at you like, you're the head, I honor you. But when you mess up, can you say, I'm sorry? We just had this conversation actually a couple weeks ago, and it was over something really, really simple.
Yeah.
And you were going in on this point to be like, you're wrong. And you were pointing out the fact of how wrong I was
Okay.
because sometimes I think a wife just needs to hear their man say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And even though I do say I'm sorry, for a wife that is submissive, it's
Yeah.
critical to your heart. It's
Yeah.
critical to know that I can trust him as the head,
Yeah.
because not only is he my leader, not only does he lead the house, but I also know I'm safe because he can say I'm sorry and he's not going to go rogue and never be in the wrong. When you're in
Hmm.
the wrong, you got to be able to admit you're in the wrong. I
Yeah.
think that's important for husbands.
Yeah, it's important for husbands,
Yeah.
and it's important for wives because even if you are a wife that is playing her role well and
Mhm.
playing her role according to how God is asking you to play your role, your husband also needs to know that it's safe enough for him to be able to get an I'm sorry
Right.
when you mess up.
Yeah.
I think it's important for guys to be able to hear that as well, because I don't think any human being just wants to be in a relationship with someone who says or gives off the impression that they are just absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're the wife that can't say sorry, what you are basically letting your husband know is that I know that you have things to work on, but I'm good.
It's such a turnoff.
It's, yeah.
And could it be, Jen, that just simply not being able to say I'm sorry is a root cause or a root problem in a lot of marriages?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's because while the person who hasn't apologized has obviously and probably moved on,
Mm-hmm.
it's the person who didn't receive an apology
Yeah.
that is now, it's lingering for them.
Yeah.
They are in pain over it now.
Yeah.
Something that maybe even wasn't that big of a deal is now a huge deal because now it has festered, and all they can remember when you talk to them is that, but you never said sorry for what you did the last time.
Come on.
And so I think absolutely not being able to say I'm sorry is a big problem in marriage also, Mark, because when you can't say I'm sorry, you're also saying I'm not going to change, because a true apology starts with an I'm sorry and it ends with a change in behavior.
Yeah.
It's like when we repent before God, it's not enough to say, God, I'm sorry. He's looking for you to now turn away from that sin, turn
Right.
away from that wrong behavior. So in marriage, it's hurtful when you can't say, I'm sorry, because that's the first step, I believe, to changed behavior. A lack of
Yeah.
I'm sorry is also a lack of changed behavior.
Yeah.
And no one goes into a marriage having behaviors that they don't need to change.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that couples, a lot of people in their marriage right now, they're on opposite sides of the marriage. No
Hmm.
one wants to cross the line,
Yeah.
go over the fence, and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to feel that vulnerable. No one wants to feel like I'm weak,
Hmm.
I'm not strong. So a lot of couples go to counseling, and they've been going to counseling for months, they've been going to counseling for years. They're still fighting because no one will step up and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're just digging their heels into the ground and holding on to their position.
Hmm.
And I think, like, it's so um mind blowing how many couples can't say I'm sorry. And that's actually the first step to moving on and seeing change
Yeah.
and transformation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I think that you can also overuse sorry if you're saying sorry and we don't see any. So, okay, if
Uh-uh.
your spouse says to you, I really just don't like when you, I don't know, schedule dates on Thursdays.
Right.
Right. That just, you keep scheduling on Thursdays. Thursday's my most hectic day at work. Can and then I'm running late or it gets canceled. Can you just stop scheduling dates on Thursdays? And you say,
I'm s-
I'm sorry. But then they look at the family calendar and you've booked a restaurant for Thursday. Now, my thing is, Tyrone, what is your wife? Maybe I should have used Jamal. But what is your wife supposed to think if you're in charge of date nights and she is asking you to please stop scheduling them on Thursday and you just keep saying I'm sorry, but you keep scheduling them on Thursdays?
Tyrone, huh?
That sounds like somebody that would just keep scheduling it on a Thursday after she said it doesn't work. But if you say I'm sorry, what day would work for you, or I'm sorry, and next time she looks at the family calendar, it's on Friday, then she knows you're actually sorry. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes people also use sorry as a get out of
That's
jail
so good.
card.
That's so good. How about folks that say sorry, but they're not really sorry?
Yeah.
How do you know someone is sorry?
The
Because
behavior
the
changes.
behavior changes.
Yep.
And you can't, like, you've used up all your sorries. You've used them up.
Oh
You
man.
have used up all of your sorries
Sorry if that's you. No pun
because
intended, but sorry if that's you.
you have said I'm sorry so much, but nothing has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's someone out there right now who has given you chance and chance and
Yeah.
chance. Like it's so infidelity is such a heartbreaking
Mm.
thing. Infidelity is such a powerful and critical crack in a marriage
Mm.
that it has the potential to definitely dissolve the marriage.
Mm.
Some marriages recover from infidelity, but can you imagine someone that steps out
Mm-hmm.
and then their spouse finds out about it and they say, I'm sorry,
Right.
and then they work on their marriage, and then a year or two later they step out again,
Mm.
and then they come back and say, I'm sorry.
Wow.
So you've used up all your sorries.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, if the sorry doesn't produce the change,
Yeah.
then I no longer receive that currency. My
Right.
bank is closed.
Wow.
We only receive authentic sorries.
Mm-hmm.
If your sorry is going to produce a change, I will receive that. We can work on this.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say, I'm sorry and not change, then I cannot leave myself open and vulnerable to
Yeah.
that.
Well, even God does not hear,
Mm-mm.
even God doesn't hear an empty sorry. The Bible says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves, pray,
Turn.
turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven. So it's like God is saying, I do need you to humble yourself. I do need you to pray, but you have to also turn. It's
Right.
not enough to just humble yourself to the point where you only say, I'm sorry, God, but then you don't ever turn. He's letting you know, He's letting us know.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing y'all
Yeah.
if you don't turn. Because
Right.
he says, turn from their wicked ways. At that point is when he says, then will I hear from heaven.
Yeah.
It's him letting all of us know, Mark and I included, that if you don't turn, if you don't change, you may be saying all the I'm sorries that you want. I'm not hearing you.
Yeah.
And your spouse also by
I think
stops
that's
hearing
good.
you.
I think that's good. I think that the endless, never ending reach of God's grace is so extensive and it never stops because the door is always open,
Yeah.
but it's always open for the person that's willing to
Yeah,
change.
exactly.
So it doesn't mean that he won't ever hear your sorry. He's
Right.
like, hey, the door's open as long as the sorry is accompanied
Exactly.
by change. I think that's so
And the
powerful.
world, this is why even in the little things that we say and do, we have to be careful that we're not being conformed to this world because the Bible tells us not to be. But the world has a phrase, sorry, not sorry,
Right.
which essentially means I'm actually not sorry.
Yeah.
The whole sorry, not sorry phrase is all about I'm saying sorry because that's what I'm supposed to say, but I'm actually not sorry for what I did, what I said, how I saw things. And so sometimes people will be like, I cut you off in traffic. Sorry, not sorry. Well, then you just didn't need to say anything because you're
Right.
letting us know that you cut the person off in traffic and you're fine with cutting them off in traffic. You don't feel away.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but, no pun intended, I'm
Hmm.
sorry, but in a marriage, if you're sorry, not sorry,
Hmm.
then that is actually going to present problems in the marriage because your spouse is like, listen, if you're going to be sorry, not sorry,
Yeah.
then I don't think we can continue this thing
Yeah.
and be successful.
Yeah. It's real, guys, meaning the necessity of you being sorry. So we do want you to say you're sorry. So we don't want you to go to the other extreme now and like, oh well, Mark and Jen said as long as I change. No, your spouse does need to hear it. We're just saying back up those words with changed behavior.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason why we have kids that can't apologize and say sorry is because we have parents that don't say
Yeah,
sorry.
that's true.
And they can't teach their kids to say sorry
Hmm.
because they don't know how to say sorry
Well,
themselves.
that's why in the Teaching profession. A lot of teachers are frustrated because when my dad first started teaching, when he graduated from college, if you called a parent, now there's always exceptions to the rule, but he said for the most part, if you called a parent back then in the 70s and said, hey, Billy was acting up in class today. He was talking out of turn,
Yeah.
wouldn't listen, being insubordinate. That parent comes to the school, but not to get on you as the teacher. The parent comes up to the school to say, Billy, you need to step outside because I shouldn't be getting a call from your teacher that
Right.
this is not what I sent you to school for.
Right.
Teachers now, when they call a parent to say your child is acting up, parents are like, well, what did you do to make them call out? As if teachers are just at school provoking your child.
Right.
I mean, and it's that same I don't have to apologize culture.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's just an example to prove your point that you're absolutely right. This is why we have a generation of young people who can't say they're sorry, who do not want to be subordinate because they have households where parents are also not saying sorry, not wanting to be subordinate.
Yeah. You know, and you see it all in our culture.
Yeah.
Like on social media, everybody's right because what I think is right, it can never be wrong because I'm entitled to my opinion and
Yeah.
my perspective. And while I understood that from a foundational standpoint, that, hey, people have a voice, people have an opinion, the problem with that is that now it's gone to the extreme. And no matter what perspective you have, then you get to be right. And then
Yeah.
so no one's humble enough to say, I'm wrong.
Right. Yep.
So I get to interpret the Bible the way I want. I get to run my house the way I want. I
Wow.
get to do my marriage the way I want.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be sorry because I'm never wrong.
Yeah. Wow. That's good.
And a culture that is never wrong is a culture that can never be right.
That's good. Oh, that is so good. Say that again.
Yeah, a culture that's never wrong is a culture that can never be right. Therefore, a
I like that.
marriage or a spouse that is never wrong is a spouse that can never be right.
That's
At
good.
some point, you're
That's good.
wrong.
Yeah.
At some point, you've made a mistake. And if you can't apologize, then you can never be right.
Yeah.
So, being wrong, being able to raise your hand and say, I messed up, is actually when you're able to be right.
That's good. I love
Um,
that.
yeah, I think that is really important for marriages.
I like that.
So,
This was a good one today.
yeah, I think this is a good one. And I'd say that um, it works on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
When you're with someone that can say, I'm sorry
Mm-hmm.
and apologize, because you're one, because you're blended as a married couple, that attribute, that humility starts to rub off on you. And I think one of the best ways to encourage your spouse to be more apologetic and to be more humble is for you to be apologetic and be humble. Because it
That's
should
good.
start to highlight to them, man, they're always apologizing. They're always able to say they're wrong, and I can't do that. It should start to break that pride down.
Well, you know what? Two things come to mind when you say that. Number
Yeah.
one, I noticed when we first got married, you said to me, Jen, do you notice my mom is always saying thank you?
Yeah.
You're like, you could do something big for my mom and she says thank you. But you were like, Jay, like, start paying attention to my mom. If you just hand her a pencil, she's like, thank you. And I started paying attention. My mother-in-law, I don't even know if she realizes it anymore because it's probably so much a part of her. But if she's like, does anyone have sanitizer, right? If somebody says sanitizer and you give them a drop of sanitizer, most people, yes, they're going to say thank you. But if they don't, you're not like, hey, I
Right.
just, but like, you're like, oh, here's a squirt of sanitizer, mom. And she's like, thank you, hon. And then if she's like in her purse and she's like, oh, I thought I had a pen. If you hand her a purse, thank you. You know, I mean, it's the least little thing.
Yeah.
You could literally just be standing next to her and you see something on the floor and you pick it up before she sees it. Oh, thank you. Like, and I say all that to say, I think it has rubbed off on Mark because usually after dinner, he's like, Jay, thank you for dinner.
Yeah.
Or Jay, thanks for breakfast.
Yeah.
Thanks for, like, he says thank you probably more often than he realizes. And they're human. I'm not saying they catch it every time, but
Right.
my point to what Mark was saying is I think that rubbed off on him. So now, do you know what our kids say? Thank you for dinner, mommy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think who you're around should rub off on you.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, I agree that you should be so intentional with your I'm sorry that it does make your spouse say, man, I don't feel right not apologizing because they're always apologizing to me because we're trusting that you have the godly spouse that God intended for you to have. And
Yeah.
so they should be flexible enough to maybe, you don't even have to always start an argument and say, do you notice how much I say I'm sorry? And then you're never saying, just be, then there's a song.
That's fighting words right there.
Listen,
If you start a conversation like
it
that.
is. And then there's a song I learned in, in school, you have like chorus and they do holiday programs and stuff. And there's this song that we would always sing for Christmas in my elementary school. And it was the teacher, music teacher taught it to us. And she would always teach us this song that says, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me.
Right.
With God as our brother, brothers with God as our father, brothers all are we. Let there be peace on earth and
Right.
let it begin with me. And as a kid, you're just going through the motions singing the song because they told you to sing it. But you
Yeah.
realize even in your home, let there be peace in my home, but let it begin with me. We're always looking for the other person to initiate what we want to see. You have to be the change that you want to see, not just in the world. How about in your own
Let's
house?
go.
In your own marriage, be the
Because
change.
right, because you're sitting there talking about your spouse like they can't say sorry. They never say sorry. They never say sorry. But are you saying sorry enough to
Exactly.
create a culture in your house where it's easy to apologize? Let's
Right.
also talk about that, right?
Oh, okay.
You know, this that's what I love about these conversations because they just start to grow and grow and grow. Are you the type of person that I can apologize to?
Right. That's true too.
Listen,
That's true too.
are you the type of spouse? Am I married to someone that if I apologize and make myself vulnerable and say, yeah, I messed up, are you going to receive that the right
That's
way?
true
Or
too.
are you going to run my face in it
Yeah, that's true.
and make me feel
So you
even
do
worse?
have to make it safe to say sorry.
It's got to be safe.
Because if your spouse is coming to you and saying, I'm
Yeah.
really sorry that I forgot that today, we were supposed to hang out, you can't then turn around and be like, yeah, you are sorry. And guess what? Next time, because then the person is like building up a wall.
You got to
It's
make
got to
it
be safe
safe.
to say sorry.
It has to be safe to say sorry.
That was good, Mark. We coming from that perspective that yeah, you need to apologize, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, if you're receiving the apology, your spouse has to be able to say it without you jumping on them even more. They know that they did something wrong. That is why they're saying they're sorry. So that's not the time and the moment to air out all the grievances and all the reasons why you're upset.
Listen, I so many things are just flashing in my brain because I can see couples right now that okay, he messed up. He's saying I'm sorry. I'm not even going to talk about what he messed up in because that right it depends.
Yeah.
But from a general standpoint, he messed up, and then you can't receive it in a way
Yeah.
that makes it safe for him to apologize, nah, you're going to flip out. Nah, you're going to run down the list. You're going to start talking about how many times he messed up.
Yeah.
You're going to start talking about if he was a better man, if he was like so and so, or if he was any good type of man, then he wouldn't have done this. And see, it's not safe to say I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's good.
It's not safe to say. So that's the thing about being a man is that we know we mess up. We know that we make mistakes, but it's very difficult to say, I'm sorry, especially if the environment isn't safe. If I know you have my back, and if I know that it's going to be safe to say, I'm sorry, then I can kind of grow into that and even apologize more. But what the thing that a man hates and what actually compromises our masculinity is when we say, I'm sorry, but then we get a laundry list of how we're no good, how we can't do this, how we can't do that.
Yeah.
Because as a man, you want to be the best. You want to be the king of the
Yeah.
castle. You want to be the best man you could be, and you don't want to make mistakes, even though you do make
Yeah,
mistakes.
yeah,
But then if your woman is like, yeah, all you do is mess up. All you
yeah.
do is make mistakes. You can't keep no job. All you do is get a job and lose it. So then I can't apologize. Then I start to hide. Then
Mm.
I start to lie. Then I start to cover my faults because I can't be vulnerable enough to
Well,
say, here's where I make mistakes.
only your enemy throws your past in your face. That's why the enemy of your soul, that's why the enemy condemns you. In
Yeah.
God, there is therefore now no condemnation.
Right.
Meaning that, yeah, you have to repent, you have to turn, there can be consequences for your actions, but God is not condemning you if you're truly sorry and repentant.
Yeah.
That's where grace comes in. So you have to think about, if you won't accept your spouse's apology, are you their enemy? Because God accepts true apologies. It's the enemy that after you've repented and said you're sorry, that comes right back to you and
Yeah.
says, yeah, but remember what you did last time?
Yeah.
Remember how many times you've had to say sorry for the same thing? Remember how many times? So you got to think about it. Only an enemy throws an apology in your face and tells you that your apology is worth nothing.
Yeah.
Only an enemy. So if you're not your spouse's enemy, then you got to ask yourself, then
Wow.
why am I making their sorry not a safe place?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm supposed to be their friend, their partner, their cheerleader, why am I acting like an enemy?
Why am I acting like an enemy? And that's why God is the easiest person to apologize to. Once you start building up the courage
Yeah.
to know that I can actually bring every care, every problem, and give it to Him, and He's okay with it, and He
Mm-hmm.
can handle it. Because all God does is create a safe space for people to come and repent. But we find it difficult to do that because I think our world, the way we're shaped, is that, man, we learned early when we apologize, it may not have been safe. Even parents.
Mm.
Like, what happens when your kid does something wrong? Because kids do a million things wrong. Like, a million. A million. I just had this conversation with my daughter yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how come you can't admit that you messed up? Do you fear that you're going to get in trouble?
And it
What
took
is
like
driving?
15 minutes for her to admit what we
Yeah.
already knew, but
Where it like, but why won't you say that? I want
yeah.
to create a safe environment where you
Yes.
can say, "Hey, I messed up."
Right.
Is it because you think I'm gonna get on you? Is it you think that you're gonna have consequences? Tell me why. Because that affects her ability when she gets married. You
Mm.
know, when she's 60, when she gets married at 60, then she won't be able to apologize.
Oh boy.
Because she shaped that, hey, when I say I'm sorry, even though I'm sorry, there's still a consequence.
Yeah.
And that's why God is like, hey, I receive it. It's safe.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
safe. This
Exactly.
is so good.
Yeah.
This
And
is
I
so
think
dope.
God is gracious because he doesn't want us to hide. He
Yes.
doesn't want us to,
Can you imagine if there were
yeah. I
consequences?
mean, the first thing Adam did was hide because that's what your sin and your mistakes cause you to do. But God called Adam out and said, "Where are you?"
This
And Adam's
is,
like, "I hid myself because I was ashamed. And God is letting Adam know, listen, we're going to have to clothe you. We're going to have to, you are going to have some consequences to your behavior, but ultimately, I don't want you to hide from me." He did have to put Adam out of the garden, but he didn't put Adam out of his presence.
that's good.
So we're not saying that because you say sorry, there's no consequence, because what you're saying sorry for might be severe.
Yeah, he put him out of paradise, but not out of his presence.
Yeah. So if
That's
you
good.
if you forget something or you do something significant in your marriage, we're not saying that once you say sorry, there's no consequence. You
Right.
may have to work through the consequence of what comes along with that behavior,
Yeah.
but we're saying that ultimately we're praying that your spouse will make it a safe space where it's a space of grace so that after you work through the wrong that was done,
Yeah.
you all can still move on and still be in fellowship and still be in relationship, because maybe if you can say sorry and admit you're wrong, maybe you don't have to be out of your spouse's presence.
This is so good. This is a sermon.
Uh-oh. Okay.
This is a sermon because it started with marriage.
Mm-hmm.
but it really flows into God
Yeah.
and how he thinks. And I think a lot of his kids are not saying sorry enough.
Yeah.
They don't feel safe.
They don't think there's going to be any grace. They don't think there's
Yeah.
going to be any redemption.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, this is so good. All right. We're going to leave it there.
yes,
This has
yes.
been a really good one. And we want to let you know that we do everything we can to help and empower couples. That's our heart, and that's what God has called us to do. So we even created a 6-week course.
6-week course to help
Yeah,
you start living the marriage of your dreams.
yeah. And it goes through so many important pillars
Yeah.
to hold your marriage up and to support it and to put it on the path to success. And we feel like after 16 years of marriage, we've learned a few things,
Mm-hmm.
and God has showed us ways. He has shown us ways for you to be successful in your marriage. And you'll get, I think, one of the greatest aspects or most important aspects of the course is the fact that we introduce not only practical things, but spiritual things
Mm-hmm.
to help couples navigate their marriage.
Yeah.
Because marriages are really under tremendous
Oh,
attack
absolutely.
right now. And you're going to overcome if you do the practical things, but you're also going to overcome if you do the spiritual things. So click the link
Yes.
in the description to grab the course, find out more about all the things that we're bringing to help your marriage thrive.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we can continue to bring fresh content to you every single week. This has
Yeah.
been another episode of Breakfast with Mark and Jen, and we will catch you next time. Take care.